it's kind of well for me to actually talk about a movie discussing of it's either good or bad. But at the same time, considering that Fox has been purchased by Disney and Blue Sky is probably owned by Disney, I decided that I'm going to be talking about the second animated film, Robots, which I consider to be the most underrated Blue Sky film of all time. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that this is really underrated from everyone else's standards. For during this time when this movie was released, Blue Sky has only made two films, the first Ice Age and this movie. And then afterwards they made another Ice Age movie. Afterwards they made a different movie. The next was an Ice Age movie, the next was a different movie, which was Rio, and then the next was another Ice Age movie. The reason why I mention this is that this is basically Blue Sky's second step on trying to be really creative of its animation department. And that's the fact that they're putting the focus on metal objects instead of, falls and other material. If you look at Ice Age, it wasn't really good looking because, of course, it was in 2002, and considering the fact that the Ice Age sequels are way more better than this, the first movie's animation is a little outdated by some standards who really enjoy the first Ice Age movie. However, with this movie, I can say that this is probably the best looking animated film of 2005. And I'm saying that because in 2005 there was no Pixar movie, and most of the DreamWorks movies were... I wouldn't say that Madagascar is bad, but at the same time, I think that this movie looks way more better than this. Mainly for the award that Blue Sky has made, which is Robot City. In my opinion, this is one of the most original awards I have ever seen from any other animation film. And that is saying a lot when it comes to not talking about Pixar or DreamWorks. Seriously, even though that this movie has two locations involved, which was Robot City and the place where Rodney has been born and been raised, I can tell that this movie really did a really great job involving the world involving robots, even by 2005. This is a huge improvement over the last film that they did, because they completely upgraded the animation and made Robot City a really great world to live in. Basically the robot metropolis of the robot universe. The designs on the robots look really unique. I mean, you can tell that they probably want to have some kind of different design so you can understand which one is the real Rodney and one is the real Viper and stuff like that. I can really think that these designs really fit the characters so much. And as for the villains, since that we're dealing with corporate businessmen, they usually do some shining and mostly gray colors, which actually make them really good to look at. I really think that this movie does the benefit of the doubt of making these characters good and sometimes bad, which is based on the designs in this movie, which I really admire so much. But anyway, enough about talking about the animation. I should talk about the story on what this is really about. Rodney Copperbottom, voiced by Ewan McGregor, wants to go to Robot City so he can get a job, so he can pay up Mr. Gunks' Mr. Gunk, who is basically the boss of Rodney's dad, and he wants to easily just trying his best to make up the fact that Rodney's dad is about to, go really outmoded at the end of this movie. Rodney just really needs to get a lot of money in order to show his ideas to Big Well, so he's really got what it takes to be a great inventor. However, during this time, Ratchet is taking over and he's completely changing everything. When Bigwell was just trying to repair robots to make them more functional, Ratchet's goal is to make them get upgrades, which is really expensive, but I'll get to that when I get to that. And since Rodney has nowhere else to sleep, he decides to sleep with the Rusties, which is Vendor, Viper, and these three other robots. The blue robot is probably the most unique one because he doesn't have a voice, so one of his friends trying to find a voice box for him. Yeah, Diesel really has a really interesting character trait that he doesn't have a personality, but also at the same time mostly friendly by having some kind of facial expressions from his face. Really actually found that really enjoyable from his character. The other characters have some funny personalities. When it comes to Blue Sky films, they usually try their best to make every joke as funny as possible, even if they ended up being juvenile than more normal than juvenile or something. But I really think that most of the characters in this movie really fit, and there was not one single character that is really annoying or hateable. Last, that includes Vendor. Yes, I can understand that he's considered a little annoying considering the fact that he overreacts way too much, but at the same time, this is the guy who voiced Robin Williams has completely voiced Vendor in this movie. And to be quite honest, considering the fact that he passed away almost 5 years ago, I think that seeing his performance here really makes everything in this movie way more tolerable when he's around. I mean, sure, he does really stupid things like completely ignoring Rodney during the Big Red Ball when he gets in trouble, and sometimes do really over-exaggerating reactions, but at the same time, I don't think that he's really one of the most annoying characters. For one, he isn't completely selfish or really obnoxious like Grayson from The Nut Job. I mean, he's actually more respectful, and when it comes to his relationship with Rodney, he's more sometimes down to earth, but for the majority, he's usually funny, but not in a more irritating way. You can say all you want about these kinds of characters, but for me, if these characters have some kind of qualities, then they don't really hurt the movie that much, even though that they kind of went through a lot of Uniquest's scenes when it comes to Rodney's and Bendo's interactions. Because the first time they met, Bendo was taking pictures, the second was when they were in this bar roller coaster type, and then the third time is when they become best friends, is when Bendo steals Rodney's foot. That's literally something I don't think that actually works, but at the same time I think they're just trying to do their best to have Rodney go to Big World Industries and have him some kind of interactions between Ratchet and the situation that is at hand. Speaking of Ratchet, I know people are really fed up and annoyed with the greedy villain just wanting to get money by doing the most corporate way possible, which is what we've seen from other villains do in other movies. But here, considering the fact that this is all doing it in an industry and not like a huge adventure like finding some rare material, I can easily accept that. Besides, I think that Ratchet is just way too entertaining and every time that he's on screen, he usually tries to steal the show, and it sometimes works out in the movie's benefit. His mother, Gasket, is probably a really intimidating villain, even though that she spends the majority in her factory. There was that one time when she went to Big World Industries to remind Ratchet that someone is fixing the outmods out there, which I will get to later. I really think that this villain, Gasket, isn't really much of a memorable villain, considering the fact that Ratchet is caroling the disastrous plan on having people wearing upgrades, while Gasket is just trying her best to easily have the Almords becoming shred. I mean, it's like these two are working together by having, if one group of people are going to be upgrades, they're taking on Ratchet's advice. But when they denied, they're going to Gasket's advice by getting them completely destroyed in Gasket's factory. And the next couple of characters that I'm going to be discussing is Bigwell and Rodney and his father. First, let's get into Bigwell. Now, he's the most popular robot because he completely fixed so much robots in Robot City for almost becoming outmodes. However, when Ratchet completely took over, he really feels that apparently he's more of an outmode considering the fact that Ratchet is making a lot more money. Which is, I think that this villain wanting more money gimmick isn't really much of an issue because considering the fact that they're doing an industry plot in this more than gaining money into other places to stuff in that. Sorry. But my point is that I think that Bigwell used to be something that Rodney wants to see as a future and forever role model when it comes to robots all over the planet. However, when it comes to him giving up, I guess it really goes to show that he really, really wants to be alone since that he's probably getting close to retirement. But when he makes his decision on returning to his industry, into his company, you can tell that he wants to put his foot down after everything that Ratchet has been doing. Ratchet has been making most of the robots in Robot City, getting close to out modes, and he pretty much has a change of heart by proving to everyone, especially to Rodney, that he isn't an out mode whatsoever. I mean, the only difference is that in the beginning of the film, he's a little skinny when it comes to Rodney's age, but then later on in the film, he has gotten a lot bigger. I don't know if anyone can notice that, but I kind of did just days before I did this recording. Anyway, let's get into Rodney and his father. This relationship and this plot is the main reason why I adore this movie more than I ever did in any other movie that is considered underrated. What do I mean by that? Well, if you really think about it, this movie is about chasing your dream and becoming a great something of what you're good at. However, at the same time, you really feel yourself that you're not going to be succeed, kind of like Rodney's dad has did in the past. Because an incident happened in Rodney's father's life that really caused him to be more of a dishwasher, and his life wasn't really the same. And it gets even worse when he's getting this close to becoming an out mode, and Rodney needs to work as fast as possible in order to get the right parts for his father. And then when Rodney tries to get to Bigwell Industries, he really tries his best to make the wrong things right, but not in Ratchet's way. He wants to do it his way by making a difference, by showing to everyone that he really does have the experience on becoming a great inventor. During the music sequence with Rodney, it's just fixing up all the robots in Robot City because of them becoming out modes. You can tell that he's just doing everything he can to make a huge difference. And when these robots demand more parts, man, that comes to the point where Rodney really needs to find Bigwell because he's literally the only one who can fix all this situation. Because when you really have so much people around getting really too outmoded, you can tell that things are just gonna get way more complicated. Rodney even says that he's not even Bigwelled. And when he managed to find Bigwell along with Cappy, which I'm probably going to get to afterwards because she's probably the most least interesting character in this entire movie, he really succeeds and completely changed everyone else's lives better by doing the same thing Bigwell did, even though that he said to himself that he really isn't Bigwell like I mentioned before. Which is why I think that Rodney is probably one of the most interesting characters in Blue Sky's studio films. Since that he's probably the most down-to-earth and more respectful person in order to make good things better and not have terrible people like Ratchet make really disastrous things in Robot City. Okay, let's get into Kathy, which is probably the most least interesting character in this entire movie. Now, she isn't terrible, but she's still uninteresting, which is what makes her the least interesting, least favorite character in this entire movie. Now, I can understand that she's supposed to be Rodney's love interest, but at the same time, we get little screen time of her. We only get to see her at the beginning of the film, and apparently, when Rodney completely got into the top of the building of Bigwell Industries, we only get is a stare, and then Rodney just blushed mostly, well not really blushed, but smiled, which is basically love at first sight or something, even though that it really wasn't the case whatsoever. And the reason why I say that is because during the next interactions we get to see these two, it's mainly the fact that Rodney is just trying to find Bigwell, and then when Bigwell decides to, man up and just tries his best to actually stop Ratchet, even though that somehow backfired, he completely say that Kathy is Rodney's girlfriend, and Wonderbot, which is Rodney's invention, completely agrees, which I just don't understand how that works, because we didn't get to see a lot of screen time between these two. I mean, sure, Kathy is happy that Rodney is stepping up against Radric for doing these decisions, but at the same time, there really wasn't enough. It really wasn't. Granted, it could have been much more better if Kathy had a lot of screen time and more depth in her character, but considering the fact that we had Viper, who, by one of the voice actors said in the making of this movie, says that she has a crush on Whitney, we just basically have Viper 2.0, except that she is more of a corporate girl, more than a happy girl who is more in the heart of Whitney and stuff like that. I honestly think that this relationship is just phoned in, and even though that this isn't a terrible romantic relationship other than other things that I've seen in the past, it's still phoned in, but not really good executed. That's all I really have to say about the characters in this movie. They really work, except with the exception of one. So I really think that these are probably the best cast of characters from Blue Sky, even though that this is probably the one time we're ever going to see them. Let's get into the comedy in this movie, which is basically Blue Sky's formula of being way too juvenile. Now, the juvenile comedy in this isn't as juvenile as I see in other movies. Even though that there's obviously a lot of pop culture gags, which I will admit I'm really irritated by that, but Shark Tale says otherwise because, my god, that movie has terrible pop culture references, and I'm going to do an analysis video on that when talking about Finding Nemo, but this movie's comedy, it's not as irritating as I remember it. I mean, when you look at this movie alone and the fact that you have a lot of knowledge of what the movie's all about when you get older, you can tell that they probably wanted to do their best to make this movie more family friendly for the most. Even though that's basically what anime films are like nowadays when it comes to PG films. So I really think that some of the comedy in this movie really works for some people, but when it comes to people who watch movies before it, mainly Shrek, will most likely criticize the movie from stealing ideas and not being mostly original with its comedy. Yes, I completely saw Blockbuster Buster's review on this movie, and he completely mentioned Shrek Wrestling. Yeah, didn't actually expect something like that to actually happen. But other than that, I think that the comedy in this movie is just for what it is. Now here's something that I really enjoy about this movie, which really makes the animation take it to a whole new level. One of my favorite action scenes in this whole movie is when Big Weld and Rodney is just trying to get away from the security, from completely destroying Big Weld and Rodney, from becoming the real outmodes in the gasket factory. So Rodney is just trying to get away from so many security by using Big Weld, by being the most speediest. Seriously, Big Weld is so fast enough. He's basically Sonic the Hedgehog, except that he's a robot. Just by watching the scene when Rodney is just trying to move Big Weld from getting through so many obstacles, and then towards the end of this fun activity that lasted for about less than a minute, we get to see Ratchet and Cappy do a tug of war. And then during this time, Bento and the others are just trying to save Rodney from getting captured and turning to outmodes, which I really enjoy this scene so much. It's so fast-paced, and seeing that this is probably the only time we're ever going to see something like this happen between robots, I think it really goes to show that we probably really need a sequel from this, but at the same time, I'll get to that later. I swear, this sequence is probably the best sequence I've ever seen from Blue Sky has ever did. And as for the climax of the film, I think I would enjoy it. I mean, at the same time, it could have been a lot more serious, but at the same time, considering the fact that they've been through a lot and we get to see Rodney's robots from getting fixed, that the robots that Rodney has fixed throughout this movie, I can guarantee you it's probably a great war to see fancy stuff against outmodes, which actually really works, and I really enjoy it. So that's basically my thoughts on the Robots movie, and here's the reason why we're probably not going to get a sequel. Ignoring the fact that Robin Williams have passed away, which is, there's no way that Bendel is going to be in the sequel, even if there's going to be another actor portraying Robin Williams, which is going to be a really difficult task. I think there's probably no reason for this to continue. Here's a reason why this movie should stay as a standalone. This is mainly about chasing your dreams, and then after this, it will probably show that Rodney has working with Big Wheel Industries, and that's basically all that he's going to be doing for the rest of his life. I mean, Robot City is just basically a mixed society when it comes to higher robots who have better equipment and stuff against robots who like the way that they are. And continuing a sequel on that will probably take the same ideals, and I don't think there will probably be some kind of continuation involving robots. I think that sequels like this will probably be like the Ice Age sequels. Which is probably a good thing, because considering the fact that Blue Sky's sequels fetish is having so much Ice Age sequels, and the fact that the fifth one was a huge disaster, especially that it came out after the Peanuts movie, I think that it's probably a good thing that some of these movies are standalones, which is something I think that Blue Sky should have done when it comes to the movies and not making countless sequels like Ice Age. As I mentioned earlier, that Disney has its own Fox, and that includes the Blue Sky films. So I really think that the next anime film, Spies in Disguise, is probably going to be a step forward of what Blue Sky is trying to take. Now, I know some people are going to say that Blue Sky might be shutting down after this movie because Disney is working on two animation studios, their studio and Pixar, but I really think that won't be the case involving Blue Sky. I can understand that Blue Sky is something that Fox made just so that they can have an animation company, but considering the fact that they did nothing but order Blue Sky to make so many Ice Age sequels, and the fact that some of the movies do have some good visuals, but at the same time, not good enough to be considered one of the best movies that Blue Sky has ever made, I really think that Blue Sky would need some kind of improvement and some advice from Disney. I mean, you can argue all you want, but Blue Sky, after being a company for about 20 years, I think that they should probably step up the game and becoming like Disney and Pixar is. And especially the fact that they're having a Will Smith movie that is obviously going to be better than the Will Smith movie that DreamWorks has did. Jeez, that just makes so many shots when it comes to me talking about the movies I'm going to be doing this month. Who knew? Anyway, that's basically all I have to say about this movie. You can say all you want that it can't be mixed when it comes to Blue Sky standalone, but I really hope that Blue Sky takes some inspiration from this movie so they can do more on the future movies. This movie is probably the best that they ever did until the Peanuts movie came out. I mean, the difference between this movie and the Peanuts movie is that the Peanuts movie is talking to a long demographic, while this movie has the same rating as the other Blue Sky movies have. They probably did so much originality and so much interest into making the world really great in imagination, to the point that I really wish that Blue Sky could have been like the ECW of animation films. I completely say that because I immediately think that Disney is basically WWE and DreamWorks is WCW, and I think of Blue Sky as ECW. Yeah, I really have a weird mindset when it comes to studios and companies being mostly similar when it comes to the businesses and the opportunities on trying to make better films. Yeah, I'm weird, but weird in a good way. I know I don't usually do this with analysis videos, but considering the fact that this is kind of like a review and me discussing on why I enjoy this movie, I'm gonna give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I really hope that people who are still fans of Blue Sky can still have some hope that Blue Sky was still continued even if they got purchased from Disney. Anyway, I'm Lonely Fanboy 4 here, and the next analysis video I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks or so will be on Shark Tale vs. Finding Nemo, and man, it's going to be a very, very long video compared to this one. Hopefully not.